I worked 2 jobs to support my family. In the early mornings, I was a baker at the local supermarket. I went in at 5 a.m. and came out at 10 a.m. every day of the week except Sunday. After my bakery job, I had a couple hours to spend with my wife and kids if they were home from school, get a bite to eat, maybe take a nap or a shower, and then I was off to my second job as an Uber Eats delivery driver. I usually started my deliveries in the early afternoon, trying to get the tail end of lunchtime. Then I would go till 7 or 8 p.m. to get the peak dinner hours. I could never get through any more than that, as by that point I've been up for almost 14 hours, and I've driven all over a dozen times. One night, my wife called me around 6:30 asking me to come home to spend time with her and the kids. I told her I would finish my last delivery, which luckily wasn't too far from the house. Then I'd head home. The house was in the neighborhood right next to ours, so it felt like I was delivering to a neighbor when I parked by the curb at the address. I got out of my car with the food and walked up the path to the door, knocking a few times. Usually people would rather just have me leave it at the door and avoid interaction, but this order specifically stated that they wanted it personally handed off. When the door opened and I saw the customer, I wished I could have changed that. He was this huge muscular man who stood a foot over me. His entire body, including his face, was covered with black tattoos. They all looked like prison tattoos, so I knew this guy was definitely in a gang. He didn't say anything to me. He just stared at me with this frightening mean glare. After stuttering a bit, I introduced myself as his Uber Eats delivery driver and tried to hand him the food. All I wanted him to do was take the bag. Once he did that, my job was done and I could leave. But this guy had to do the one thing that almost nobody does. He smiled and offered me a cash tip. But even worse, he wouldn't accept anything unless I came inside his house to get it. Not only was entering a customer's home a violation of company rules liable to get me fired, but I was also terrified by the thought of going in there more than anything. I refused the tip and pushed the food a little closer to him, but then the man's smile disappeared. He demanded I go into the house to receive my tip. I said no once again, and before I could even close my lips, the man grabbed my arm.
Ah! No! Let go!
I pulled back as he tried to drag me into the house. I dropped the food and begged him to let me go and take it, but he didn't want anything to do with it. All he wanted was me. I was powerless against his immense strength, and before long, I was plummeting inside the house, trapped with no way out.
No, please, you have to let me go! I have a family!
Empty your pockets, bitch!
Okay, just please don't hurt me. Here, this is everything. I know it's not much.
Are you shitting me? Is this all you got? All the Uber Eats chops and tips you get on a daily basis, and this is all you got to offer me?
I don't carry cash and I just paid rent yesterday. But you could go ahead and max out my credit cards. I won't press charges, I swear. Just please have mercy on me.
You're gonna pay with your life!
My husband said he'd be home by 7 p.m. that night. 7 p.m. came and went. I called him and texted him again and again, but I never heard a thing. I stayed up all night, worried sick, wondering what could have happened to him. He said his last delivery wasn't far from the house, so he had to be close. The thought that he was lying to me only lasted a moment. I knew something was wrong. Something must have happened to him, as he wasn't the type of guy to go out and do suspicious things. I called the police in the early hours of the following morning to report him missing. I told them he was an Uber Eats driver, so they were able to use the GPS data from the company to find his last known location. Sure enough, it was right where he said he'd be, not too far from our house at all, but by then, his car wasn't there. The police investigated the house, and where I thought I would find relief from all my worries, I found only senseless tragedy, a deep trauma that my children and I will never recover from. My dear husband was found in pieces, in trash bags, just thrown out the side of that monster's house like garbage. I can't even bring myself to say much more than that. The demon responsible was arrested, but there is no punishment on earth fitting for what that despicable creature disguised as a human did to my family.
The story was inspired by a horrifying Uber Eats incident regarding an accused MS-13 gang member who has been arrested in Holiday, Florida. and charged in what the sheriff described as a demonic slaying of an Uber Eats delivery driver whose dismembered remains were found at the suspect's home. The suspect in question was 30-year-old Oscar Salas. He is the resident of the home where the Uber Eats driver made his final stop. He was arrested and charged with the slaying while engaged in a robbery after investigators uncovered the victim's remains in trash bags at the home. Investigators believe Salas tried to rob the driver and ultimately took him out. The driver was not far from his own house that night when he texted his wife to say he was making his final delivery and would be home soon. The victim was 59-year-old Randall William Cook. That was the last time the wife would hear from her husband, who she reported missing later that night after he stopped replying to her texts and never came home. GPS data provided to detectives by Uber shows the driver's last known location, which was Salas's home. The next day, video from an additional home camera shows Salas and another person carrying trash bags around the side of the house, one of which appears heavy and needed to be dragged across the ground.
I do loss prevention at Walmart. I just got switched over to this position from stocking shelves a few weeks ago. The job consisted of getting to wear regular clothes, wander around the store, and act like a regular shopper, but in reality, I have to look out for sketchy behavior and shoplifting, as I always work during peak hours, when the most shoplifting happens. So far, I haven't had much trouble with the people I've caught, all except for one occasion. It was the busiest hour of the day, as usual, when I was looking around. That's when I spotted a fat old woman rolling around on a mobility scooter. She was real freaky looking. I don't know how else to describe her, but it was like she was made of rags, all layered on top of each other and drooping downward. And her breasts looked like 2 tube socks filled with handfuls of change. I usually have more sympathy for the elderly and the disabled, but something about her was sketchy, so I started tailing her. It didn't take long for my suspicions to grow. She spotted me early on and glared at me before her eyes darted away and she drove off. Whenever we ended up in the same aisle, she would immediately leave and go to another one. And despite my efforts to not get caught watching her, we made eye contact quite a few times. Eventually, she actually confronted me before I confronted her, saying,
Are you stalking me?
"No, I'm not."
Then stop following me!
Lady, I wouldn't even follow you on Instagram, let alone in real life. I then saw her go into another aisle. That's when I started tailing about 10 yards behind her. By the time I got around the corner, she had turned around to camp right at the end of the aisle, causing me to bump into her on accident, setting her off.
You better get the hell away from me, you creep! I ought to smack you with my sandbags and get you arrested this instant!
Ma'am, please, I'm not following you. It's just a coincidence. I couldn't tell if she really thought I was stalking her, or if she was just angry with me getting in the way of her stealing. I never caught her in the act, but I noticed something pretty strange. I'd seen her disappear into an aisle and come back out a few minutes later looking like she had put on even more weight. This happened 2 or 3 times, and I eventually couldn't let it go any further. I went up and confronted her. I revealed that I was a loss prevention officer and that I knew she was stealing. But instead of accepting that she'd been caught, the situation blew up in my face.
Who do you think you are? A cop?
No, ma'am, I'm not a cop. I already told you I work for Walmart.
Well, you can't do anything to me then! You're more worthless than a mall cop! Get out of my way!
Ma'am, I know you've been stuffing merchandise under your shirt.
The audacity! The only thing I stuff in my face when I'm at McDonald's or my husband when he—
Bitch, I can see the corner of a box sticking out right there.
That's my nipple, you pervert! I knew you were just a creep! Help! Somebody get this creep away from me!
Calm down, the cops won't be as nice as me.
Stop it! Stop it!
Suddenly, the nasty woman started ramming into me with her cart. I tried to push it back, but it was more powerful than I expected. I saw the bright red kill switch on the handle and smacked it, turning it off. The woman tried starting it up again so she could ram into me some more, but when she couldn't figure it out, she got even more hysterical, flailing her arms in anger and screaming nonsense. I stepped closer to try and detain her, but then she jumped out of the seat and grabbed me. She latched onto me and tried to gouge my eyes out. You bitch! I couldn't stand with all her weight hanging on me, so I fell to the ground, only for her to get on top of me. It was like being enveloped into a disgusting mass of fat. Smells that shouldn't exist assaulted my nostrils. I had to use all my strength to push her off. Then I kicked her off me, sending her rolling away. She rolled about 6 feet away from her scooter, immediately trying to crawl over to it because she couldn't even walk. I watched as she tried to pull herself up onto it, but she just kept falling. The cops were already on their way, so after a minute of struggling to watch that sad sight, I just sat down on the scooter and put my feet on her back, leaning forward a good amount to press my weight onto her. The police eventually came and took her out of the store. Apparently, she had several other shoplifting convictions, so my gut feeling about her in the beginning turned out to be more correct than I thought. It doesn't thrill me, though. After dealing with her, I am seriously reconsidering this loss prevention job. I don't want to go through anything like that ever again. This story was inspired by a bizarre incident regarding a 67-year-old woman named Karen Bayless, who was arrested after allegedly getting caught shoplifting from the Walmart on Greenbrier Road. Wichita Falls Police Department spokesperson Sergeant Harold McClure said officers were dispatched to the Walmart located in the 5100 block of Greenbrier Road for a theft and criminal trespass call. Officers spoke with Walmart loss prevention officer who told them they observed the suspect, later identified as Bayless, acting suspiciously. Loss prevention officers told police that while Bayless, riding the motorized scooter, removed barcodes from items and concealed the items under her. That's when loss prevention officers followed Bayless out of the store, where they detained her. 3 stolen items were recovered: an electric pencil sharpener, a box cutter, and 2 packages of razor blades. Record shows that Bayless had 3 previous convictions for theft. Bayless was arrested for theft with 2 or more previous convictions and criminal trespass.
I'm still traumatized by what happened to me that night. Even after all this time, I still haven't gotten over it. Now since the viral Haktua girl is all over the internet, it's all coming back to me again. It all happened years ago. I was at a bar getting trashed one night with my friends. I would usually end up there every weekend, as the bar wasn't too far from my apartment. It was just a short 5-minute bus ride to get there, so I never had to worry about driving back home after drinking. That night, I had met a couple of my friends there in the early evening, and we had immediately gotten shit-faced. That's pretty much what we always did back then. After we were good and trashed, we would prowl around the bar and try to hit on girls. I wasn't having much luck that night though. I got curved by dozens of girls and couldn't seem to catch a break with any of them, as I was too shit-faced. I had drank so much that I was wobbly and falling all over the place. Plus, I kept spilling drinks and slurring my words any time that I went up to a girl. It just wasn't my night. After a night of rejection, I ended up sulking at the bar by myself. I alluded my striking out to the fact that I was so wobbly and trashed out of my mind. But it didn't help that my friends were all able to get dances with girls that night. They even got a few numbers. So, I sat at the bar and got more trashed while my friends kept hitting on girls. It ended up getting crazy late. Finally, I decided that I didn't want to sit there and watch my friends get so lucky, so I got up to leave. I was already completely hammered anyway. When I got outside, I headed over to the bus stop to wait. It was completely dead over there since no one ever took the bus. Most people took Ubers home and waited outside closer to the bar, but I always preferred the bus because it was way cheaper. By that time, most people were already heading home anyway as it was so late. So, I sat by myself and waited for the bus to arrive. After I had been there for a while, the hottest girl suddenly walked over and sat next to me at the bus stop. She looked like the Haktua girl. I was surprised that someone else would be taking the bus so late, especially a girl as hot as this one. I considered trying to talk to her, but after the night that I'd had, I didn't want to get curved again. I didn't think there was any way a girl that hot was going to have anything to do with me, especially with how wasted I was. So I continued to sit there, not saying anything. It felt super awkward to just sit there in silence. I finally just wished that the bus would come so that I could leave. Then, suddenly, the girl started talking to me.
Rough night?
I was totally shocked that she had said anything, and I was still too shit-faced to think of anything to say.
Yeah, kinda.
I figured at that point that I had completely blown it, but to my surprise, she kept talking.
You look like you enjoy rough nights.
Oh, yeah, I guess my ex would say that.
I still didn't know why the girl was talking to me. After being rejected by so many girls that night, it just didn't make any sense. But as we sat there waiting for the bus, we kept chatting. She was super nice to talk to and unexpectedly flirty. I started feeling like I might have a chance with her. She kept laughing at everything I said, and she actually seemed interested in me. I still didn't want to say anything to blow it though. We continued to talk about random stuff for several more minutes.
Man, is this bus ever going to get here? We've been waiting forever.
Well, since we have the time, maybe we can make the most of it.
For a second, I thought I had just imagined it, but there was no mistaking what she had just said. After getting over my shock, I told her that I was down. We both got up and headed over to a nearby alleyway. As I walked back to the bus stop with the girl, something just didn't sit right. I couldn't quite tell what it was, but something just seemed off. The two of us sat back down at the bus stop and continued to wait. I didn't know if it was the drinks, something I ate, or maybe the Haktua. I just didn't feel right. We both continued to sit at the bus stop, but by that point, all I wanted to do was go home. Then the woman put her hand on my shoulder.
Are you okay?
It was a guy's voice. I immediately freaked out as I realized the harsh, sobering reality of what had just happened. I just couldn't believe it. That person kept asking me if I was alright. The voice kept rattling around in my head. That's when I just couldn't take it anymore. So I pulled out a knife and charged at her, screaming, "Ah!" I eventually ran home and hid from the police. I did my best to forget about what happened, but the cops eventually arrested me in my apartment. They were able to use surveillance footage and a nearby witness to track me down. I didn't resist when they came. Now I'm traumatized by the Haktua girl as she reminds me of my deadly night. This story was inspired by a horrifying incident regarding a 25-year-old man who has been charged with taking out a woman after she apparently made him feel suspicious after being intimate. Haktua, Damarian Kalen Bible from Minneapolis, was charged with second-degree murder after the deadly incident near Lake Street in the early hours of November 29th. After initially denying taking out 38-year-old Savannah Ryan Williams, he allegedly later confessed to the crime after investigators showed him surveillance footage they had gathered. Bible reportedly met Williams in a bus shelter, who asked him if he was interested in, and after it was finished, his weariness lingered. Subsequently, he took the woman out after claiming he had to do it. Investigators found firearm residue in the hood of Williams' sweatshirt. It is currently unknown why Bible felt so suspicious during the act. Witnesses told cops that they heard a loud bang at approximately 5:45 a.m. and spotted a man leaving the scene. Bible's identity was confirmed by the apartment management after police reportedly provided a photograph of the individual. The man was arrested, and during a phone call with his father, he allegedly admitted that he quote-unquote took someone out. According to police, he reportedly added that he knew he wasn't God, but he had to do it. Bible now faces up to 40 years in prison.
Ever since this recent video of that Haktua girl went viral, I'm reminded of what happened to me a few years ago. She looked almost identical to this girl I once knew. I was driving home after visiting some relatives. It was late and the road was dark as hell. I drove to the nearest gas station to fill up on some gas before heading home. To my surprise, I saw a young woman walking out of the gas station alone. She looked cold and lost, so I pulled over and asked if she needed a ride. Hey, you alright?
Oh, I'm fine, thanks.
A girl like you shouldn't be alone on a road like this at night. Just let me help you out. There's a lot of scumbags around here. It's not safe. I could tell she was hesitant, but I pressed further. She eventually caved and hopped in the passenger side. For the first few miles, our destinations were in the same direction. During that time, I tried to diffuse the tension by asking her why she was stranded on the side of the road. She didn't say much except that she was at a friend's house and just decided to head home on her own. After a few minutes, we passed by a gas station at the junction which led to her house. She noticed that I missed the turn and started to get confused. I kept driving toward my house in the outskirts, as if on autopilot, but she started freaking out.
Hey, I think you passed my house. Hello? My house is the other way! Answer me now!
Be quiet! At that precise moment, she finally realized what was happening and started to panic even more. That's when I pulled out a knife and held it up next to her. The woman then simmered down and went completely silent. I could visibly see the woman shitting bricks. When we finally got to my house, I drove into the garage and parked. I then unbuckled my seatbelt and grabbed a hold of the woman as she kicked and screamed like a little baby. I then yanked her out of the car and pulled her out, carrying her over my shoulder into the house. I then threw her in the basement, where there was no chance in hell she would escape. The basement was a soundproof barren of concrete block except for a few basic amenities I'd prepared for such an occasion. I didn't chain her up though. I just kept her in there and out-wrestled her whenever I needed something. For a few euphoric evenings, I had it my way. She was always resistant, but a few genuine threats always made things easier. Then, one night, when I went down to check on her, she seemed different. Oh, poor little thing. Don't be sad. You know I'm gonna let you free someday, right? Just not today. I'm sorry I had to do this to you. I really am. It's just been way too hard to get a girl to stay with me. So I had to steal the company of a girl like you from the world. Just for a little while, though. Look, it's not all bad. I can provide for you. I'll keep you safe. I just want one little thing from you. Whoa, take it easy. Don't make me hurt you. I don't want to, but I will.
You're not gonna hurt me, 'cause you know what I want.
Oh, really? And what's that?
The same thing that makes all men go crazy. The one thing we haven't done yet. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, if you say so. But, could you just tone it down a little? With all the creepy stuff you're doing, it's kinda taking me out of it.
Don't worry, it's all a part of the fun.
Okay, then. Here we go.
Let me go, you psycho bitch! No! Stop! Please! Please!
She left me there in a pool of my own blood, grasping for my manhood in agony. But it wasn't there anymore. It was on the ground. She tricked me into letting my guard down. I should have known she was up to something. Afterwards, she managed to escape from the house, then ran down the road wailing like a banshee, banging on people's doors in complete hysterics, until she eventually barged into the local Waffle House. There, the staff called the police. Hours later, I was arrested on the verge of bleeding out. At the hospital, I tried to reattach what that monster of a woman had bitten off. But because of how jagged the wound was, there was nothing they could do. Now, I've got nothing left there but a stump with a hole in it. The salt in the wound is, I get to hear the sound I heard right before I lost it all the time. Haktua.
The story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a kidnapped woman who reportedly bit off an attacker's private part after being held captive at knife point. The victim fought off a 61-year-old man named Dennis Slayton, who then fled into the street and covered in blood. Slayton was a registered offender with multiple previous convictions and was later charged with first-degree criminal conduct and kidnapping. He allegedly abducted the woman in the city of Greenville after stopping at a patrol station to give her a lift. Instead of dropping the woman off at the street she requested, he threatened her with a knife and took her to his home. After forcing the woman into his house, the victim eventually fought off Slayton, severing his you-know-what, and used his knife as self-defense before fleeing his house. Jacqueline Fair, who lives across the road from Slayton, said the woman he allegedly attacked had banged desperately on her front door on the night of the alleged kidnapping. However, Jacqueline was too scared to open the door. Police said the woman had continued running down the road, knocking on doors before reaching a Waffle House half a mile away, where staff gave her clothes and called 911. Slayton was found at home covered in blood, taken to a hospital where he underwent surgery, and then later was arrested and charged. He has since been released on bail.
I went to Walmart with my girlfriend late at night to avoid the crowds. It's the best time to go shopping in my opinion. We went around the store, putting a lot of stuff in our cart. This was one of those big stocking up trips, so that's why my girlfriend went with me. As we strolled around the aisles, she pointed out that it seemed like we were being followed. That's when I noticed this creepy, gaunt-looking dude staring at us. At first, I didn't quite believe her, but I then noticed it too. Wherever we went, he followed. Always just far away from us that I couldn't say anything to him without shouting. I didn't want to approach him though. He was freaking both of us out. The way he was grinning just made it 10 times worse. I tried to see if we could lose him quickly by going down aisles and doubling back a few aisles over, but he always found us. When it came time to go over to the checkout area, we hoped that cutting through the clothing section would help us not run into him. The guy was creepy as hell. I thought about complaining to the Walmart staff about this weirdo, but he technically wasn't breaking the law. So we decided to just check out and get the hell out of there as soon as possible. But then out of nowhere, he jumped out from behind a rack and tackled me.
Ah! What the hell are you doing? Get off me!
I'm a loss prevention officer. You're being detained for theft. We got him. Come on out.
But we didn't steal anything!
Shut up! Shut the hell up before I split your face open! We know who you are!
Stop! He didn't do anything wrong! Help us! Somebody! He's innocent!
Quiet, bitch, or you're going down with him!
I was so caught off guard. As he was pinning me down, I tried pleading with him to let me go, but nothing I said made him act any different. I was so confused. I'd never stolen anything in my life, and definitely not that night. I tried to think of any other reason he might have thought I was stealing, but it just didn't make any sense. I kept begging the guy to let me go, but everything I said just made him dig his knee into my neck even harder. When the cops came, he finally let me up, only for me to be dragged from the ground and pinned against the wall as they put me in handcuffs. The cop didn't listen to anything I said either. By this point, I wasn't just confused. I was getting pissed off.
Mr. Von der Linde, you are under arrest for theft of over $100. You have—
What? That's not my name! That's not me!
Sir, calm down.
No, you got the wrong guy! Check my wallet! Look at my ID! Look!
Sir, do not reach into your pocket! Sir!
As I tried pulling out my wallet from my back pocket, the cop thought I was going to pull out a weapon, so he body slammed me to the floor. He drove my face into the ground and tightened the handcuffs as far as they would go, digging them into my wrist. I thought he was going to take me out. I was sure the next thing I felt was going to be a bullet through my chest, or my whole body being electrocuted until I got brain damaged. I didn't want any of that to happen, so I just went limp. Unfortunately, my supposed resistance made the cop even more of a douchebag. He lifted me up and put me on my feet, then started pushing me out of the store so hard I almost tripped and fell on my face several times. My girlfriend had started filming and was crying, but there was no sympathy for her either. They kept threatening to take her down like they did me and arrest her. I can't understand how somebody can scream in the face of a sobbing woman and then push her boyfriend into a wall right after. I had given up on trying to convince them that they had the wrong guy. I was taken to a holding cell in the county jail. They took all my belongings and made me change out of my clothes as they were booking me. I couldn't help but tell the clerk to look at my ID and tell me what it said. When she said my name, I saw the cop realize he had screwed up, but instead of being sorry, He looked like he was about to punch me in the face. He made the clerk check to see if it was a fake, which of course it wasn't, but it still wasn't enough for them to let me go. That piece of crap called me a liar and threw me in a cell. Then he left. I was there for hours, almost an entire day before I was finally released the next night. Someone with a brain finally took a look at why I was in there and let me out. The real culprit they were looking for did get arrested soon after. I went looking for his mugshot, but lo and behold, he looked nothing like me. The only similarities were that we were both the same ethnicity and had short hair. I'm suing the loss prevention idiot, the cop, and Walmart for falsely arresting me. I expect to be paid. Not only was I never observed stealing, I was racially profiled and assaulted. Loss prevention officers should never even have the right to physically detain anyone. They're not cops, but I guess they just like the power trip and think they are one. It's scary to think that there might be a person like that watching you in any store you walk into. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a man at the center of a viral video of an arrest at a Spring Hill Walmart. Tony Nguyen of Hudson said he's suing Walmart, a loss prevention officer, and the Hernando County deputy who arrested him. The lawsuit calls for more than $10 million over claims of racial profiling and false arrest. I'm just happy to be alive today. It could have went south. I could be dead, Nguyen said. Plaintiffs said authorities were looking to arrest Cody Vondelinde, another man of Asian descent but thought he was Nguyen during a visit in November. The video taken by Nguyen's girlfriend has garnered more than 800,000 views on his YouTube channel. Plaintiffs state through the 911 audio that the real suspect, Vondelinde, was aggressive and likely armed. The plaintiffs state Nguyen was never asked for his identification. The lawsuit claims it wasn't until they reached the jail that Nguyen's identity was confirmed. Plaintiffs also claim in their lawsuit that Nguyen wasn't cleared right away. Instead, authorities used a 2013 incident in which Nguyen had been trespassed due to shoplifting at the same Walmart to keep him detained. The plaintiffs said charges were later dropped.
This happened last year, and has traumatized me from using Uber Eats since. I used to hang out with a lot of deadbeat dropouts. I had been rolling around with that crowd since secondary school, and though it took me far too long to realize, they'd been holding me back. It seemed like they were fine with spending their entire lives being cashiers and dishwashers, so I tricked myself into thinking the same thing. This one guy named Samson was sort of like our ringleader, and we usually kind of followed what he said or did. He got us into a lot of trouble as we spent our days causing fights in public, picking on strangers, pulling scams, shoplifting and dine and dashing, and just doing whatever the hell we wanted and getting what we wanted. It was fun when we were in school, but we kept doing this until we were in our 20s. It took my poor mother screaming in my face every day for years telling me to clean up my act before the reality of what I was doing finally set in. I didn't want to be like my friends for the rest of my life. I didn't want to end up in jail or dead in a ditch somewhere. Then one day, I was met face to face with the consequences of everything I was doing wrong. My friends and I were blazing in public as usual. We were at some park near a few residential buildings, whistling at the women who walked by and hassling the men for money. We were also talking smack about every Uber Eats deliverer we saw come by, making fun of their little bikes and scooters, and how they were hustling so hard to make next to nothing in pay. I went along with it too, because if I didn't, I knew I'd be the next target. Then, Samson started to hatch a plan. The next time we saw a deliverer stop to drop off their order, we'd go and steal whatever they were riding on, no matter what it was. I knew this was a bad idea, so I tried to talk everyone out of it.
Guys, are you insane? Look at how many people are out here. They'll snitch on us.
Yo, am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? You want to be the one to steal it? That sounds like a great idea.
What? No, did you hear what I said?
Shut up, you little chicken shit. Did you hear what I said? You're gonna steal it, or the two of us will jump the shit out of you.
God damn it, fine, I'll steal it.
I had only made things worse for myself. I started to get very anxious, hoping to God it was all just a joke. But it didn't take more than 30 seconds for a man on a moped to catch Samson's attention. The man had an Uber Eats bag in his basket. He rode down the street, And as soon as he started to slow down, Samson slapped me and our other friend on our shoulders and yanked us into action. We approached the other end of the street as the rider parked his scooter on the curb and got off with the bag. As soon as he started walking toward a building, Samson ran for it. We followed him and tried to get on his bike to drive off with it, but the rider had taken his keys. We resorted to dragging across the pavement by hand, but the parking brake was on, so the wheels wouldn't roll. By then, all our swearing and shouts from onlookers had caught the rider's attention. Out of nowhere, he ran back to confront us, grabbing a hold of his scooter.
Hey, what the hell are you doing? Shut up! Let go, we'll kick your ass! Guys, stop, this is stupid! I knew you were too soft! Forget it, get the keys!
Suddenly, Samson and my friend dropped the scooter, then jumped the rider. I begged them to stop as he had already given up, but they wouldn't listen to me. I looked around and everyone was watching us in horror. I realized it then. We were the monsters. I was snapped out of my trance as a set of keys hit my chest. It felt like the onlookers were closing in. Any moment now they would rush us. Then we would be the ones getting beat, and possibly going to jail. I was way too scared to face that. I grabbed the keys and mounted the moped. Then I rode off. As soon as I got away, I saw Samson and my friend run off in the side mirrors, and the bystanders finally rushed in to help the man we attacked. I cried as I drove the scooter to Samson's house where we all meet up. I told him he could keep the stupid bike. I didn't want anything to do with it, and for that matter, I didn't want anything to do with him either. I went back to my mom's house and tried to forget I had ever done anything, but the next morning, the police were at the door. I didn't put up any sort of fight. My mother was distraught enough to see me get taken away. She didn't need to see me getting clubbed unconscious because I thought I could run. The others were arrested too. The initial charges were for assault and battery and the theft of a scooter. But while we were in custody, the Uber Eats driver had tragically passed away from his injuries, upgrading the charges to manslaughter and even murder. With a good lawyer and genuine candor in my statement of remorse, I was let off with fines, as well as my other friend. But as for Samson, he received a lengthy prison sentence. I feel it's what he deserves. Every time I see an Uber Eats driver, I'm not only reminded of how many years of my life were wasted with him, but what he did to that poor man who was trying to provide for his family. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding 3 males who have been found guilty of taking out an Uber Eats delivery driver as he tried to stop his scooter from being stolen. 46-year-old Adurval De Silva was tragically attacked in Battersea, West London on May 25th of 2019. 19-year-old Jaden Richards and another male who could not be named for legal reasons, both from Wandsworth, were found guilty of the slaying. A third male was also found guilty of the slaying but was later cleared of it. It was alleged that the victim De Silva had parked his scooter outside a Battersea cafe. A group of young men spotted the unattended moped and one of them tried to snatch it. When De Silva tried to stop him, he was set upon in a quote-unquote momentary explosion of short-lived violence, said the prosecutor. He was left unconscious on the ground and passed away 3 days later from bleeding in the brain. Witnesses watched on in horror as the unprovoked attack unfolded. They rushed to De Silva's aid after the attackers fled, but were too late as the damage was already done.
I came with my daughter from India to Canada 2 years ago. The transition was very hard. Going from the warm weather of India to the long and cold winters of Halifax was only the beginning. We came here ahead of my husband and sons. Our goal was to eventually move here permanently as a family. My beautiful daughter performed a miracle by getting accepted into a wonderful school, paving the way for us. We had to get jobs while we waited for everyone else. The only place that would agree to hire both of us was the huge Walmart in the center of town. I worked full-time while my daughter split her time with school, but every single hour we spent there, we were worked like dogs. We were given little to no training in all the departments, yet we were expected to know how to do everything in the store. I was scheduled for nearly 60 hours a week before I even knew what overtime was, and my breaks were frequently interrupted. To make matters worse, the customers were extremely rude and demanding of all of us. and the store was so incredibly busy from open to close that we were all constantly under a lot of stress. My daughter and I would be cussed at, pushed around, and ganged up on. Our bosses were part of the problem too. We quickly learned that complaints would not do us any good. In fact, they would only lead us to threats of being fired. Unfortunately, we did not have any other choice but to suck it up, as my daughter's costs of school combined with all of our other bills was very high, so we needed this job to make ends meet. One day, we were scheduled for the same shift. Whenever that happened, we always tried to take our lunch breaks at the same time, but when I sat down to eat that day, she never showed up. At first, I figured she was in the washroom, but several minutes passed and I still didn't see her. I texted her, but she didn't respond. After a few more minutes, I called her. There was something in the back of my mind telling me something was wrong. Throughout the rest of the day while working, I continued trying to find my daughter or reach her on the phone. I kept my eye out for her, and whenever I had a few seconds to spare, I got my phone out and texted her. I got more worried and anxious the longer I went without seeing her. When our shifts were over, I waited for her to show up outside the store where we always met, but she never showed up there either. That's when I started to panic. I went inside and searched the entire store, combing through every aisle and looking in every department and every bathroom and any other place I could think of. After 20 minutes of frantically speeding around the store, I stopped outside the kitchen area to catch my breath. I was on the verge of tears. Just then, I heard giggling from the kitchen. I looked over and saw a few of my coworkers standing together. They were looking at me and laughing, creeping me the hell out. Something about them just scared the shit out of me as I knew they knew something. So I went over and started talking to them.
Hey, where's my daughter? What? I don't know what you're talking about. Stop playing games, you high cholesterol bitches! I know she was working in the kitchen today! What happened to her? Gosh, I don't know. Wait, isn't it 5 already? I think she went home.
In a last-ditch effort, I dialed the emergency number. I couldn't rest until she was found. When the police arrived, the managers tried to brush everything off and shoot them away because the cops would scare away customers. Thankfully, the officers were more sympathetic to the gut instinct of a mother. We began searching the entire store again, starting in the kitchen. Soon into the search, one officer pointed to the walk-in oven and asked what was behind that door. I told him what it was and he asked that I open it. None of the gods in all existence could have braced me for what I saw next. I opened the door and was blasted with a wave of heat. And then, there she was, my daughter. There was only what remained of her after being trapped in that oven for hours. I broke down into a sobbing, screaming mess when I saw what happened to my beautiful girl. What that heat had done to her. Even now, I can hardly stand to think of it. I still await for the arrival of my husbands and sons to comfort me. But for now, all I can do is turn my grief into rage. The investigation of how my daughter was trapped in the oven is still ongoing, but I don't need to be a detective to know what happened. It's impossible for someone to just waltz in there and cook themselves. It's designed against that. The door is heavy and can't be closed from the inside, much less locked. The controls for the time and temperature are also on the outside. Somebody, probably the multiple people working together, trapped her in that oven and turned it on, then left her there to burn away, unable to get help, unable to escape. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding the passing of a 19-year-old Walmart employee found in a bakery oven. Gursimran Kaur, an immigrant from India, was burned to death at a Walmart bakery on October 19th. According to a GoFundMe created by a Maritime Sikh Society executive, it was alleged that the victim Kaur and her mother had worked at Walmart for 2 years. The mother became worried when she didn't hear from or see her daughter around the store. Unlike the usual check-ins, the mother eventually opened a walk-in oven to find her daughter's quote-unquote charred remains. The fundraiser's page said that Kaur's father and brother were in India at the time of her untimely demise and were trying to get to the US. It is unknown whether they arrived in America or not. Police have stated that the matter was very complex and the investigation is ongoing. On October 31st, a spokesperson for the Halifax Region Police told Newsweek that any public updates on the Kaur case would be shared on its website and social media. At the time of the publication, there have been no updates. haven't felt like myself in years because of what happened to me. It was a long time ago, and I almost kept it buried. But one day, part of my story got leaked online. Until now, it was just a rumor. I'm from the streets of South Philly, where I'd never be respected again if this came out for real. As much as I would like to remain anonymous, I don't think it's much use, so I'll just go by Cheek Bill. I came up from the hood all the way to the stage and made my first million rapping. It was never enough though. I kept grinding, making more fans and more connections. Then, one day I caught the attention of the one and only P. Diddy. His team reached out, inviting me to one of his house parties. I almost didn't believe it. Getting connected with Diddy would elevate my career to the real deal big time. I was gassed up. I went all out on a pristine white suit since the dress code was all white. I'd heard rumors, but I had no idea what I was walking into. There must have been a dozen big name celebs, but nothing compared to P. Diddy himself. I thought I'd be like an ant, but almost as soon as I walked in, Diddy spotted me through the crowd. He was on a giant sofa with the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. Even compared to all the other 10 out of 10s, all I could think to do was nod, but he didn't nod back. He didn't move at all. He was wearing those iconic shades too. I didn't want to stare, so I looked away and started getting into the party. It was so unbelievable. Every single person was either famous or gorgeous, and everyone was out of their minds. I wanted to stay cool, so I just had a few drinks. Those few drinks had me more wasted than I could ever remember though. I went around talking to everybody I could, but I can't remember any of them. Only that I kept noticing over their shoulders that Diddy kept finding me in the crowd and staring at me. I started to feel like maybe he was never even looking away. There were a lot of hot women everywhere, but he wouldn't look at any of them, only me. I was creeped out, but at the same time, I knew I had to meet him. I worked my way closer and closer to Diddy's entourage, hoping to eventually get close enough to talk to him. I felt like his entourage was impenetrable, but then all of a sudden, I turned around and he was standing right in front of me with his shades off. I was speechless. Diddy just smiled and put a hand on my shoulder, then leaned in to say something in my ear.
Take that, take that. What? Are you enjoying the all-white party? Yeah. You look so good in all white. That's not gonna be the only white thing that looks good on you. Dude, what are you saying to me? Listen, Mickey Mouse, follow me to the after party. Just want to give you a heads up that the dress code is gonna be a little different. I didn't bring extra. Follow me. Clothes.
I followed Diddy eagerly. I could feel the eyes of everyone around us looking at me. Diddy led me down a hall into a different room. I thought it would be like a dope fitting room with a tailor, but it was just a bedroom. It was only the two of us in there, and Diddy locked us in. I got confused, but Diddy wasn't. He was smiling, so I had to be straight with him.
Yo, Diddy, what the hell are we doing in a bedroom? I thought I was getting changed. This is the changing room. Come on, don't waste my time, Daddy. You can't get changed without taking off your clothes. Pause. I don't know about this, man. Would you just hurry up? I don't have all day, Cheek Mills.
My heart dropped to my stomach. I felt like I was at the crossroads of my destiny, but like my hand was being pulled in a direction out of my control. It didn't even feel like it was my hands that started taking off my clothes. Diddy watched until I was in my underwear. Then he signaled that those had to go too. I just went along with it. When I was totally bare, Diddy told me to start rapping. I had to close my eyes and think of a rhyme. And when I opened them, Diddy had nothing on too. He just had a bottle of baby oil. That's when I knew it was too late. Diddy's face had gone to pure evil, and he came over to me so fast.
Take that! I love you, baby. You about that life for real. Now you got it.
When I made it home, I made myself a promise. I was never going back to an all-white party ever again. I've never been the same since, but it was all on the inside. Then those videos and audio tapes got leaked, and suddenly everyone knew what happened between me and Diddy. They clowned on me, calling me Cheek Mill. They could have at least said something like Leak Mill. Then maybe they'd understand why I and the others had to speak out. I just wish I knew when to stop before I passed the point of no return. In all my years, this has been the most disturbing thing that has ever happened to me. Recently, I've been constantly reminded of it by that vulgar Haktua girl that went viral. I always thought I would be the kind of person that would want to keep up with what the younger generations were doing, but this has made me rethink that decision. I'm an older man, and at the time this happened to me, I was 65 and recently retired. My wife had passed away years prior, and suddenly, with no work to distract me, I felt the grief and loneliness of her absence all over again. I didn't have any kids to take care of either, because they had all grown up long ago and had moved out. After trying and failing to pick up a few hobbies, I finally realized the only thing that was going to help me was not to be alone anymore. I got on one of those dating apps meant for old people and went on a few dates. Eventually, I met the woman who would become my girlfriend, and she moved in after a few more dates. Neither of us were very outgoing people, so staying home most days was quite alright with us. We would just enjoy each other's company. Aside from eating and cleaning, pretty much all we did during the day was watch TV. We watched a lot of things, from the old-fashioned VHS tapes, CDs, cable, and then to what everyone watches nowadays, Netflix. We were also both in touch enough to understand what it meant to Netflix and chill. In fact, most of what we did together would be considered Netflix and chilling. The problem was how seriously my girlfriend took the chill part. I didn't expect her to want to be so active in the physical aspect of our relationship. I let her move in because I was desperate for company, but she, on the other hand, was desperate for something else too. Her libido was insane compared to mine. I wasn't even physically capable of going through with it. My heart could handle it, but the key parts of my body involved in making it happen just weren't up for it. My girlfriend tried to engage in acts with me on so many nights since she was the one with the higher libido. Invariably, she would get frustrated and lash out at me.
Are you serious? I've been at it for 15 minutes and nothing?
I'm sorry, I'm trying, but I just can't do it.
Is it because you're still hung up on your old wife? Or is it because I took off my dentures?
No, it's nothing like that.
Come on, you wrinkly sack of shit. They make pills for this, you know.
But I never thought I'd need those.
Newsflash, you need it. Now go to the doctor tomorrow. What a waste of some gummy Haktua. I'm going to bed now.
That's when my girlfriend headed to the bedroom, as I usually slept on the couch. This was how many of our nights ended. I kept putting it off, but I knew that I had no choice unless I wanted to be alone again. One morning, I went to my doctor and asked him for those happy pills. It didn't take many questions for him to believe a prescription was completely warranted. That afternoon, I went home and settled in, doing the usual dinner, TV, the same old. And then when nighttime came around, it was time for some Netflix and chill. When I saw my girlfriend settling down on the couch, I grabbed the bottle and discreetly took one of the pills. I then sat down next to her and we watched a few shows. About 20 minutes later, I started to feel the effects so strongly that even my girlfriend could tell something unusual was going on. A few minutes later, she made her usual suggestion, and I gave my usual answer, but this time with much more confidence. What happened next must have been so amazing for me that I blacked out for several minutes. The last thing I remember was blacking out to a Netflix show and her saying, Haktua, like the viral meme girl. When I came to, my girlfriend was on the floor. Her face was blue, and her eyes were rolled into the back of her head. I rushed down to help her, but she couldn't respond to anything I said. I immediately called 911 and tried to keep her alive with CPR until help arrived. But by the time it did, she was gone. When the police looked into her death, the cause was never determined. It could have been a heart attack or a stroke caused by the stress of temporary asphyxiation, or she could have just completely choked to death because of me. No matter what they say, I will always feel responsible. I was charged with involuntary manslaughter, but was able to miraculously beat the case. I have since lived a lonelier life than ever. It's been years since that day. I almost thought I was about to take the first step towards moving on. But then I saw that woman go viral for making a sound so distinctly burned into my memory. Haktua! This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a 65-year-old man named Richard Henry Patterson, the Margate man who initially claimed his girlfriend choked to death while being intimate. The man was found not guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict was announced just under 5 hours after the jury began its deliberations. Patterson faced a maximum of life in prison if convicted for the accidental slaying of a 60-year-old woman named Francisca Martinez, whose decomposing body was found in her condo. Allegedly, Patterson reached out for help from a defense lawyer without calling police. After the verdict was read, family members of the victim sat in unconcealed frustration. "This is not justice," one family member called out. Martinez's son declined to comment as he left the courtroom. While the medical evidence does not entirely exclude strangling, Patterson's lawyer said the testimony of the prosecution's medical expert agreed with his own, and that strangling was not likely. But other possibilities could also not be ruled out. Martinez could have had a heart attack or a stroke, he said. This is one of the most bizarre and disturbing cases, which takes the whole Haktua meme to another level. I've been a virgin my whole entire miserable life. I work a dead-end job at a greasy fast food joint. I'm single, never had a girlfriend, and I can't get myself to do anything in my free time but ease the pain the only way I know how. I tried every single dating app there is, from eHarmony to Tinder. Nothing. Never. Not a single girl wants anything to do with me. I've even resorted to hitting on random girls on the street since my female co-workers keep threatening to report me for harassment. I come home from work every day drenched in grease from the grill, and no amount of showering seems to be enough to get it off, so I've basically given up on it. If it weren't for the people like me scattered across the world, I wouldn't have anyone to relate to. The only people that understand me are the other hopeless incels and gooners I sometimes message with over the internet. But even among them, I feel alone. The hub is my best friend. I spend hours there every day, just sitting or lying in front of my computer, going through box after box of tissues and bottle after bottle of baby oil. It's the only lubricant that I can buy in cheap large quantities at my local drugstore, which is just a short walk from my house. The worst thing that can happen with my baby oil is running out of it. One night, I ran out of it and went absolutely ballistic. That's when I got dressed and headed out to a 24/7 store that was just a short walk down the street. When I got there, I grabbed a cart and went over to the aisle where they keep the baby oil. Then I started grabbing every bottle on the shelf as I was trying to buy in bulk, so that I didn't run out again. About halfway through, I noticed I was being watched. I thought I was the only person in the store, but there was someone at the end of the aisle, staring at me from around the corner. He must have followed me in off the street, but he didn't look homeless. In fact, he looked vaguely familiar, like I had seen him from somewhere. He had this creepy-ass look on his face. He was smiling, but I could tell he was angry with me for some reason. I kept looking at him out of the corner of my eye as I reached and grabbed another bottle, but when I did, he twitched like some cracked-out booger sugar psycho. I felt creeped out and didn't know what he wanted, so I just swept the rest of the bottles into my cart and sped off to the checkout counter. The man followed me to it, but he just stood behind me in line. As soon as I paid, I got my bags and fled from the store. I walked as fast as I could with everything I was carrying, but the man kept coming after me. I looked back and he was stalking me, with his head cocked all the way to one side. He scared me so badly that I almost tripped while dropping a bottle of baby oil out of the bag. I abandoned it, not daring to waste time trying to pick it up. A few seconds later, I looked back again, expecting to see the man right behind me, but instead he was picking up the bottle and did what I never would have expected.
Puff Daddy needs his baby oil. Yeah, I can feel it. I feel everything. I need more.
No, I paid for it. It's mine. Just use lotion or castor oil and stay away from me, you freak.
You calling me a freak? Bitch, you don't even know the half of it. But you're about to find out.
Suddenly, he burst out into a full sprint. I turned and ran for my life, taking my bag of baby oil with me. I wasn't going to let him have it if he was just going to drink it all like a maniac. I felt like he was about to get me the whole time, but I just kept running and running. Eventually, I made it home and slammed the door in his face. I locked it and looked out the peephole, just to see his insane face staring back at me. I jumped back and dropped a bag of baby oil by the door. Then I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. But then the man started trying to break the door down. I got as far away from the door as I could, but it was a one-floor bungalow house, so I was basically forced to watch the door getting smashed down.
Hello? Operator? You have to help me. There's a man trying to break into my apartment. I think it's P. Diddy.
You stole all my baby oil. Do you know what that means?
No. Operator, please send help now. Hey, what are you doing? Leave that alone. Come on, it's your turn. The sun don't shine forever, so we might as well shine together. No, get away from me! Take that! And take that! I need to share my story. I've been silenced and controlled for too long. I thought I could just move on from the situation, but people need to know that what they've heard rumors of really is as bad as they say it is. It all started 10 years ago. I was a small artist with just a couple minor hits to my name. My looks helped me get more attention than my singing alone, because there's no other way I would have been invited to that party. For legal reasons, and out of fear that this maniac might still hear about this, I can't say his name, but I think you'll know who I'm talking about when I say the man who threw the party in question was the Diddler. Unfortunately, I didn't know anything about him at the time, except that he was rich and famous. So I waltzed my pretty face right up to him and started sweet-talking him. He seemed to vibe instantly, despite not really knowing who I am, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get acquainted with a guy at the top of the music industry. We spent some time together at the party. Then he pulled the trigger and asked me out on a date. In my naive mind, I thought I had just landed the date of all dates, so I got ahead of myself and said yes. My plan was to mess around with him for a bit and leave before things got serious. I didn't want to piggyback off him for my whole career. I just wanted to jumpstart. Things didn't go according to plan though. We started sleeping together for a bit, but I didn't really like him all that much, to be honest. So I tried to jump ship after about a week or so. And where the hell do you think you're going?
Look, you're cool. I mean, you're awesome, but I'm just looking for something else. I hope you understand.
Bitch, try to understand that I am not a man you walk away from. When I tell you to leave, then you can go. Understand?
No, Diddy, that's crazy. I'm out of here.
You're not leaving. You're not leaving me. It's just gonna be me and you. Me and you. Me and you. Me and you.
That was the moment I knew I had just ruined my life. The risk I took to further my career just trapped me in a forced relationship with a psychopath. He made me pose as a happy girlfriend for the paparazzi. I knew he would try to destroy any hope I ever had of making it in music if I spoke out about what he was doing to me. So I kept quiet. I let him have his depraved house parties, knowing he was sleeping with God knows how many other people, and the entire time I remained his loyal girlfriend. At least, that was the public perception. I was just his rag doll. I didn't see my loved ones for years after that party. I could never go anywhere without his approval, and I never got it. I would just wait inside all day for him to come back from a show or a menage a trois. One day, we were sleeping together, and I made the slightest request to take it easy. The guy went psycho mode and annihilated and handled me so roughly that I thought I was going to die. Afterward, he was finished with me. He threw me aside and went to take a shower. In a panic, I thought this was my only opportunity to escape. I quickly packed what I could and ran from the hotel room. But when the door slammed shut behind me, I knew he had heard it. I started sprinting down the hall and hit the elevator buttons. When the doors didn't immediately open, I knew I was doomed. Sure enough, I heard the hotel room door open just seconds later, and I knew the elevator wouldn't come in time. I looked to my left and saw him sprinting at me wearing nothing but a towel.
That's when the psycho charged at me. Where do you think you're going? You're not getting away from me that easy, bitch! You think you could just leave without 10 more rounds?
Daddy, chill!
The next thing I remember was being dragged away back to the hotel room. I was dazed and incoherent. I started crawling away. The lights were so painfully bright that I found a blanket on the floor and covered myself. As I slowly came to, I could hear his voice mocking me. That instance broke me even further. I never regained the courage to escape. Years passed until one night, when he did a show, he left me with his only security guard with a soul. I believe he knew what was happening to me and offered to escort me back to my family at his own expense. I went with him and finally returned home. I can't thank him enough for what he did. I don't think my ex even tried to find me, but I laid low for a long time. Only when the videos of the elevator incident and the humiliating blanket video were released did I feel confident enough to take legal action. I filed charges, but at the advice of my lawyers, I decided to take a cash settlement. It'll never compare to the damage he did to me, but I would rather just be done with him than deal with him for another day.
This all happened years ago, but it still feels very recent to me. I'll never forget what happened that night. To this day, I'm still scared to be home alone. My boyfriend and I lived together in a small house back then. It was just the two of us, but it still felt kind of cramped somehow. It wasn't a bad place though, and we both worked so much that we weren't there very often. At that time, my boyfriend worked nights and I worked mornings, so we only saw each other very briefly in the evenings before he had to go to work. Otherwise, we just had the weekends together. We were both always so busy that we barely ever cooked, so we usually just ordered Uber Eats for most meals. One night, I had just got back home from an extra long shift that day. I didn't even get home in time to see my boyfriend before he went to work. I just remembered being extremely exhausted that night, so I did the usual and put in a quick Uber Eats order, then collapsed on the couch while I waited for the food. I usually watch TV in the dark at night, so I put it on just to pass the time until the food arrived. The order said that it would take 30 minutes. Then it went from 30 minutes to an hour. I waited and waited, but the time kept getting pushed back somehow. I just kept getting notified that the driver was running late. I didn't want to cancel the order as I had already paid, and it was getting pretty late, and I really didn't want to have to cook anything. I wasn't even sure that we had food in the kitchen anyways. I was hungry as hell though. I couldn't figure out why the order would be taking so long. The order kept getting pushed back more and more until 3 hours had gone by, and it still hadn't arrived. I finally decided to just cancel the order and figure something else out. I was pretty pissed though. I ordered from Uber Eats all the time, and something like that had never happened before. I was just about to put in the cancellation when I heard a loud bang on the backyard door. I was scared as shit. It was really late by that point, and it was pitch black outside. I didn't know what to do. Then I heard the bang again. Even though I was scared out of my mind, I knew that I had to go check it out. So I quickly rushed to the bedroom and grabbed the firearm that we kept in there. I had never had to use it before, but I had never been happier to have it than at that moment. I held the firearm out in front of me and slowly walked toward the kitchen where the back door was. It was completely dark in the house too. When I got to the kitchen, I tried to look out the window, but it was too dark to see anything. I listened for a moment, but there was no sound coming from outside. It was perfectly quiet. I began to think that whatever made the banging noises was gone, but I still wanted to make sure. So I forced myself to walk closer to the door, still with the firearm held out in front of me. I was shitting myself when I got to the door, but I took a deep breath and put my ear up against it. My heart was beating like crazy, but there was still no sound. I knew that I had heard something though. I moved to the window and looked outside. There was still nothing there. No sign of anything at all. I was relieved, thinking it must have been debris or something that hit the door from how windy it was outside. I lowered the firearm and began to walk back to the living room. But before I turned away, a hand suddenly slammed up against the window. And that's when I saw the scariest face ever smiling at me from the darkness. There was a man staring at me through the window like a complete lunatic. He then ran back to the door and began trying to push it open. The door was locked,
but it wasn't the strongest lock ever, and I knew it wouldn't hold for long. I continued to scream in panic as the man slammed on the door harder and harder. Finally, the door gave way and the guy burst in. I then drew the firearm at the man, terrified out of my mind, determined to not let him anywhere close to me. That's when the man suddenly backed off and dropped to his knees on the back porch. He started shaking and begging for mercy. Please, lady, just put it down. I didn't do anything wrong. I kept the firearm pointed at him, but I pulled out my phone with the other hand and recorded a video. The guy continued to tremble and begged me even more frantically on his knees. Please don't hurt me. I'll do anything. Have mercy on me, please. I then stopped the video and called the cops. Then, out of nowhere, the guy jumped up and ran out of there as fast as he could. I tried to stop, but I wasn't about to chase after the man in the dark. I contacted the police and told them the whole story. Then I waited for them, distraught. I was still incredibly shaken up. The cops arrived shortly after, but the guy had fled. They didn't find him anywhere near the house, and haven't found him since despite me providing the video I had taken. I've been traumatized ever since, and I haven't placed another Uber Eats order. I'm still scared that the man is going to show up at my house one night, and I might not be able to stop him the next time. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding an Uber Eats driver in Columbus, Ohio, who learned a hard lesson after his delivery attempt had gone wrong. A woman named Shardea Hartnett posted a video of what happened when she caught an Uber Eats driver trying to break into her home on Twitter. She claimed she ordered some food, and after it took almost 2 hours to be delivered, she fell asleep. She then claimed that she thought she was bugging when she heard banging on her door. All my deliveries are no contact, so I'm used to them leaving it at the door. I heard bumping against my door and him on the handle, but I realized he was pushing his body against the door, Hardin said. When she woke up, she opened the door and pulled her firearm in order to protect herself. The mother of 3 said the driver started begging her to forgive him. What made things even more alarming was how the supposed Uber Eats driver had no food in hand. After trying to report the man to Uber Eats, she claimed they blocked her. I reached out to Uber and the police, but Uber Eats instantly locked my account so I couldn't get his information, Hardin said. Had the victim not been armed, who knows what could have happened to her?